Hey guys, it's Ashley from Wholesaling Out of the Box, and I'm here today with Shawn Bowen, Cam Peters, and Jacob McPherson to discuss Chapter 7 of Traction by Gino Wickman. So Shawn, go ahead and take it away.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the talk on this book, Traction. Really going to deep dive into these things today for these chapters that are hopefully helping you a lot. So this one, Chapter 7, is the process component. Nothing can be fine-tuned until it's first consistent. The process component is strengthened through your understanding of the 6 to 10 core processes that make up your unique business model. You then have to make sure that everyone in your organization understands them, values them, and follows them. This component is the most neglected one, often taken for granted, undervalued by entrepreneurs and leaders. Yet the successful ones see what process can do for them by not giving this component for full attention. It's costing you money, time, efficiency, and control. Guys, this is going to be a really good talk today because we are actually in the middle of hiring our first round of cold callers. So we are defining that process, and that's something that I think we'll be able to speak to and use as this process component. A typical organization operates through 6 to 10 core processes. How these processes work together in its unique system. To break through the ceiling, build a well-oiled machine, you need to process the ability to systemize. In many organizations, people do their jobs however they want, resulting in tremendous inefficiencies and inconsistencies being embedded into the system. If leaders really saw all the variations, they'd be shocked. Oh, this is so good because we talk so much about this. This is important about having a good team. To the degree, if you can clarify your systems and hone them in, you will run a business as opposed to having your business run you. The culmination, Jesus Christ, I can't even say culmination or identifying, documenting, and having everyone follow the core process of your business is your way. When you have a clear way, you immediately increase the value of your business and strengthen your control over it and give yourself options. To systemize your organization through your core processes, you must take 2 major steps. First, you have to document the core process. Second, you have to ensure that they are all followed by every single person. So, documenting your core process.
Well, I just I want to get in a little bit real fast to tell people that right now we're expanding for our cold callers, but also in some other areas. We're pretty much completely changing how our VA structure is working and how some of us are working too, because we are bringing on, as of right now, 2 cold callers, and then we'll have 3 VAs all working on various tasks. And so we're shifting around who's working on what, and we really have to be clear about these processes because some of them have never been done by VAs. They've always been done by either, sorry, Jacob's video just went like black for a second.
I don't know what's happening.
Sorry, got just so distracted. But yeah, so some of them, most of the processes that we're about to push off to some of the VAs, only me or Cam or Shawn have ever done. And so we need to figure out a way to make sure that it can be systemized, whatever the word is, so that everything can still be done and we'll still have the same level of information. But that doesn't mean that we're not going to give them some kind of freedom either, because if they find a better way to do something that is less time consuming or easier, but you still get the same result, then yeah, we're going to take them up on that and have them show us how to do it and incorporate that into our systems or our standard operating procedures.
Yes, SOPs, standard operating procedures. All right, so documenting your core processes. There are 3 stages in documenting your way. First, you identify your core process, then you break down what happens in each one and document it. Finally, compile the information into a single package for everyone in your company. Your leadership team needs to identify and agree on what to call the 6 to 10 core processes. Take this initial step together so that you're calling your core processes the same thing. This is not an assignment to delegate to one person. Here's why. Once you start the discussion, you're going to find that you have different names for them and lack consensus on how many there are. God, that's true. The 6 to 10 core processes typically include the following. There's an HR process, there's a marketing process, the sales process, the operating processes, the accounting process, and the customer retention process. So let's go over those. All right, so this is one that I'm not even aware of, that I don't even think we do. We're starting to realize it, but to have an HR department, to have an HR process, is the way you search, hire, orient, manage, review, promote, retain, and fire people. And that's all been what you see on this screen at the moment, less the virtual assistants. So we govern ourselves as we're growing. It's a lot more to put in place. So I would say at the moment, the leadership team is what you see on this screen. The marketing process. This is the way you get your message out to your target audience and generate interest in what you do and prospects for your salespeople. The sales process is the way you convert a prospect into a customer, and the operations process are the way you make your product or you provide your services to your customer. These are typically 1 to 2 or 1 to 3 core processes within the operation, i.e. project management, logistics, warehouse, distribution, service technicians, account management, service delivery, production, quality control, and customer service. And the last 2 are the accounting process. This is the flow and management of all the monies coming in and going out. And then final is the customer retention process. This is a proactive way that you can take care of your customers after your product or service has been delivered, and the way you retain customers so that they continue to come back and send you referrals. So let's kind of go through these for a second in, I guess, our model for what we talk about as a wholesale model. And we could probably talk a little bit to the buy and hold model, maybe a small amount to fix and flip, but let's just talk about wholesaling. So the HR process, I feel like, is what we're currently going through and growing, which is, what does it look like to go out and hire individuals that are going to fit to what we want, and that is a company and core values. And then the marketing process is obviously the list that we pull in order to get that out to the marketing company we use online and have that message sent out like robotically, right, every single week. Consistency. The sales process, I feel like, is one that we've actually started to go back and redefine. This is one where I feel like we are getting really good at almost the rinse and repeat record feeling, where we're going to have the virtual assistants say the same thing as the cold callers, right? And then you're going to have your acquisitions team do the same thing as far as going through a sales script, if you would, of asking questions and getting to the seller's why. And then operations and procedures, that's all the way from understanding how to use the CRM to how to work it through the CRM, through the process, to make it a transaction, to get a flyer made, to get it to dispositions, to get it sold, and then bring revenue, which gets us to the accounting process. This is obviously, we have a CPA that works with us, and having that process defined is, we're going to probably clean that up a little bit better, but I think we do really well with it. And as far as customer retention, I would relate that to the buyer side, right? So we're constantly supplying multiple types of buyers, different types of deals, whether that be new construction and land deals, whether that be fix and flip deals, whether it be buy and holds or creative financing. So I think that if we're talking about retention to buyers, that's kind of our customer service, or that's our service in buyer. If we're talking about an avatar, that would be that type of person. Ashley, let's start with you and kind of like give your feedback on what you feel like these things are.
Yeah, I think you did a really good job describing what each of these different parts of the processes are. And I think for our company, we're still trying to figure out what our 6 to 10 core processes are. Because I think you're right in that, customer retention is important, but in some ways that's not going to be one of our core processes, because it is the buyers, but especially right now with real estate, there's low inventory. So it's not like we're going to lose that many buyers,
Right.
if that makes sense. And so I think it's important to touch on like what some of these other core processes might be. And honestly, I'm not 100% sure. I've been trying to think about this. Definitely the sales process and operations, accounting, marketing. HR is sort of iffy because we don't really use it all that often. So I don't know if I would say it was a core process important to our everyday running of the business, but it's still something that we should have in the background so that when the time comes, we're able to have that there for us, if that makes sense.
Yeah, fulfill that role for sure. Mm-hmm. All right, Jacob, what do you think?
So I kind of agree with Ashley. I mean, I think we're working on a lot of these. As far as 6 to 10 core processes, I mean, we definitely have several of them pretty well ironed out. I mean, marketing between Ashley and Cameron is something that just happens, right, on a weekly basis. It's the same thing every week, week in, week out. And that process is very well defined as far as what that looks like and what needs to happen in order for us to keep up on that front. So marketing, I think, is something that we've done really, really well at. The sales process, I would say we've done very well at as well. It's just the fact that we are in the middle of tweaking what that looks like based on, the use of cold callers and VAs and so on to try to streamline the process on the front end. But as far as the written documentation is concerned, all of that is pretty well laid out in the videos, as well as the documentation that we've all collectively written up over the last 2 years to define that. And that's really key, right? I mean, like some of these things, we go back to like why this stuff is important. I mean, the fact of the matter is that, not to be morbid or anything, but we always say it, right? Like, God forbid one of us, was all of a sudden no longer here for whatever reason, then what would it look like for somebody to come in and fill that role? And when you have these types of things documented, it's significantly easier and it makes for a faster start for whoever you are bringing on board to be able to say, here's the process that we've already laid out, that we've defined. Why don't you go ahead, watch these videos, practice this once or twice. If you have any questions, let us know. And that's going to allow that to bring that person up to speed that much faster. So having these types of processes in place is very important. I think Ashley touched on something that I consider to be critical. I think we all do, is the fact that, despite the fact that all of these are very well defined already, I would say on the marketing side, the sales side, and to a certain extent, definitely on the operations side as well. But still, depending on who is completing that, whether or not it's somebody new, if it's a VA, if it's, Cameron, me, whoever, right? The idea that processes can change, I think, is still important. I think we all agreed, actually, Cameron and I think specifically talked on this previously though, right? When you're going down, if you're somebody who's new to a process and you're starting that process, I think that the first initial thought is like, oh, well, why didn't you do it this way? Why didn't you do it that way? Right? I mean, we struggled with that a little bit. And I think that we all kind of collectively agreed that, hey, why don't you do that for, 1 or 2 months until you finally actually understand why and what and who and how before you start making potential changes to a process. That was a learning curve for us, but I think it worked out really well because after you kind of get into the swing of it, right, after it's no longer really like completely new, then it allows you, I think, to understand like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes perfect sense as to why we do it that way. So I think it's good to allow change for processes, but I think there's also, I think everybody has to remember, like, there's a reason why it was written that way to begin with. So Ashley, I know this one's very near and dear to you, but there's a reason why it was done that way, right? So to respect the person who actually created it firsthand is one thing, but then to add feedback and comments, 1 or 2 months down the road, with, after you've had some time to really digest it and talk it out. I mean, I think that that's extremely important. But as far as how we define some of these things, I mean, I think that we've done a really good job as far as things that are written, things that are in videos, and, trying to bring people up to speed. That's kind of what I see when I go down through all of this. So that's
Cool.
all I got.
Cam.
So I think we kind of honed in on three, and these were the three I was going to go for: marketing, sales, and operations. And I would kind of put those at 40% for marketing, 40% for sales, and 20% for operations. Because in our business, you got to get the marketing out, right? You got to reach to the sellers, you got to convert it to a sale. And there's, of course, some operational processes that goes on behind that. And, you know, the documentation and the making sure that the processes are uniform across everybody is super important too. So we're all on the same page with what we're doing. And I kind of thought, honestly, as we started bringing on more BAs and training up more BAs and going through the processes and recording the processes and writing all this SOPs, there's a lot of work that goes into that. And I kind of thought, well, it was all in my head, right? And so I needed to get it out, and I knew that. But I'll tell you what, because this process to turn everything fully over to some of the BAs has gone a little longer than I anticipated. All those SOPs and all those videos, I use those every week, because otherwise I don't remember. Even this morning I was doing a process and I got to the step, whatever it was, and I was like, why am I doing this step? And I had to sit back and think about it, because I would have missed that step. And there's a very good reason. And it took me like 5 minutes to figure out what that reason was, but I knew that there was a reason. You know what I mean? And that's the reason that you have a process. You document it and you use the video. And I realized that by having those down, I'm actually able to do that process in probably half the time if it was just from memory, like I was doing it from before. So it's very important to talk to processes and to have them documented, not only so somebody else can step in, but so you can remember next week, because there's way too many things going on up here. So that's the key things here to me with processes.
Awesome. All right. I like to finish that up with Ashley talks about herself as in past tense and future. Future Ashley was taken care of. Past tense Ashley.
Yeah, sometimes past Ashley really has her life together, and you know, sets up systems or processes or flows in the background and writes it all down. And then when Shawn is like, hey, I think we need to do this, and I go and I'm like, this sounds familiar, and I look, and like I said, past Ashley had it together. She took care of future Ashley so that I don't have to do it again.
Nice. All right, let's keep moving. So to finish this piece out, it says, no matter how many core processes you have, you need to identify the ones that address every activity going on in the business. This exercise creates clarity of thought that is then put down in black and white. And this is what all of you have, finished up your statements with, is that you do it once and it's forever there, right? And yeah, we might change the process and tweak it a little bit, but gosh, how easy is it to take that recording, give it to somebody, and then be very defined in its process if they follow it A to Z, and then tell me why it doesn't work, and then or come up with better ideas later, right? Every single one of you guys have said that, and that was awesome to have that just kind of like unanimous across the board. All right, so document each of the core processes. In this step, the accountability chart comes into play. The person that is accountable for a certain process takes charge of documenting it. You need to document these steps in the process at the very highest level with several bullets under each step, which are those procedures. This way you can make sure everyone is following the process. What you're illustrating are the basic guideposts to helping your people become consistent and efficient in your organization. Now let's talk about the next few things they talk about is package it and followed by all. So in package it, now that your core process is documented, step 3 is the easiest of it all. Here's where you take all the great work you've done in steps 1, 2, and package it. The titles of your core process now become your table of contents. Each documented process in step 2 becomes one of your sections. You can then put them in a binder on your company's internet or whatever you want to hold so everybody can see the same thing, and like an overview process. On the cover, put that on your company's name by the word way. If your company name is ABC Company, then it should read ABC's Company's Way. So I guess this would be Full Circle's Way if we're defining that. I don't like the ring of that though. Like, I don't like the idea of it saying this is Full Circle's Way, right? I was like,
before we move on though,
okay.
I do want to say that this is a trap that we fell into recently too, where you can't try to get too defined on this.
Yes.
It needs to be a simple process. And it's Monday right now. On Friday, we were in business development. And we were defining what it would look like to train and hire someone and what that timeline looks like. And everyone kept like in their own sections wanting to go into like deep dive. Okay, well, I think sales training needs to look like this on day 1, hour 1, or whatever the case may be. And I was one of the ones that was like, nope, squirrel, we got to go back. But Cam and Jacob both called me on it a couple of times too, where it was like, nope, can't go too far into this. We need the basics. We need the 2 to 3 points under each number or each section, and then we can go back through and start redefining. So I think that's important to remember in this step, because in all honesty, the leadership team isn't the one that's going to be doing that process. Because if I'm marketing, I'm not going to tell Cam how like the seller lead goes through the system. He's changed things since I was reworking some of that. I don't know. I know if he asks me to add a button, I can add a button, but that's kind of it.
Yep. This is good, guys. For anybody listening to this recording and the replay on this, this was the reason we did this as a company, was because this book was a game changer for me as an owner and a new entrepreneur, where I wanted the company to be on the same mindset, same page, same everything that was in my head, and everybody's role brings something different. So when we're doing this, it's because we're actually going through the process as we're reading the book and going over these chapters with you. So anybody listening to this replay, this is us as a old company reinventing ourselves to make it better, make it bigger, and make it more efficient, right? So that was the reason behind what you're hearing today and why. All right, so followed by all is the next step here. When everyone follows their process, it's much easier for managers to manage, troubleshoot, identify, and solve issues, and therefore grow the business. The clear lines of process enable you to let go and gain more control. Your business now becomes more scalable, which means that you can add more customers, transactions, revenue, employees, while reducing complexity. In order to implement this crucial step, your leadership team must be convinced that everyone should follow the one system, or the way. That's going to be like a running joke for a while. The convenience of people to follow the process. Your leadership team needs to be committed to managing all of the people to make the adjustment. If you are all committed, it will work. If you're not, it won't. Pretty simple. Stay on the same page and keep doing the same thing. You should get the same results, if not better. With the mastery of the process component, you're closing in on achieving your destination. You're now ready to bring it all down to the ground with the final piece of the puzzle, the traction component.
Yeah. And before we shift off and do final thoughts, I just want to say the followed by all part. I think that one is really important, but it's also easier than I think the book makes it seem. Partially because if you make sure that that is a part of your system from the very beginning, that is a part of your business from the beginning, I mean, it won't be a shock to your employees who have been following this since day one that this is how you're doing it. It's as you go back and try to reinvent the business that this is going to be more of an issue, which is completely understandable because some people who are reading this are reinventing your business. Some are starting from scratch. But either way, it's easier to start by saying, like, we're going to come up with a process, and that is going to be our process, and go from there, not really leaving a whole lot of room for dissent.
Good call.
Yeah. Any final thoughts, Jacob and Cam, on this chapter, systems and processes?
Just that followed by all is crucial, because if people are doing things differently, it's going to lead to chaos at some point. And it's probably going to be sooner than later. But if it's later, it's probably worse. So I think it's important to have, a lot of times we talk about processes and we might not all be at the same page when we change a process, but we talk it out. But at the end, there's always okay, so this is the agreed course of action, right? This is the way we're going, right? Everybody got it? Any questions? We good? Yep. And we move on. And it just avoids chaos later. So that's super important.
Yep.
Anything for Jacob?
I don't know that I really have much else to add. I mean, I agree with everything that was just said, of course, wholeheartedly. I would just reiterate, like, the followed by all, right? Like, this is not to say that things won't change or things can't change, right? But the way that I've always looked at that, just to try to get you guys to visualize where I'm coming from here, but like take acquisitions, for example, right? Like, there's a certain point in the process where everything has to be nicely, neatly bundled and handed over to disposition so that the deal can be sold to an end buyer, right? As far as I'm concerned, under the acquisitions realm, right, all of the processes that ultimately lead up to that perfect bow package handoff off to dispo, that is what is susceptible to change based on the people that are coming into your organization. As long as the end result of the handoff to dispo never changes and it's still everything that dispo requires to continue their portion of the process moving forward, everything else is susceptible to change based on what needs to happen, right? And it's the same thing with dispo. Like, they can continue to make changes within the actual dispo detailed processes, as long as at the end of the day, how they work with buyers and how they work with acquisitions all comes together in the same light. So it's kind of like the idea of internal customers is the way I've always thought about it, right? So you have internal and you have external customers being, I'm acquisitions, then it goes to Cam for dispo, right? Then it goes to Ashley for basically follow-up and closing, right? For a transaction coordinator. And then Shawn, of course, jumps in as necessary on pretty much the entirety of it. So it's just the idea of, like, it is okay to make changes, but again, like, these are things that are followed by all. And I think that those crucial steps, for sure, as far as what those handoffs look like internally, those are the things that have to stick every single time, unless you all come together and you make a specific change on the process, of course. But wholeheartedly agree, though. Absolutely. Followed by all is key. Packaging is key. Documenting everything is key.
Awesome.
All right. Wonderful. So thanks so much, guys, for joining us for our discussion of Chapter 7 of Traction by Gino Wickman. Join us next week for Chapter 8, and then we are slowly making our way to the end of the book. And hopefully you guys are enjoying it. If you have suggestions for another book we should do like this, let us know. We're looking for our second one right now. And talk to you guys soon. Bye.